New perspectives come to light, revealing Soul's darkest secrets. Today, Devin and Peter will examine how badly the Jedi shit the bed on Brendok. The show contains spoilers for The Acolyte, episodes 1 through 7, and selections from the High Republic novels. Hi, I'm Peter!
And I'm Devin, and this is I Am No Acolyte. Today we'll be discussing episode 7, Choice.
What's your overall verdict? Were you, satisfied, slightly disappointed? Where were you on this?
I didn't feel disappointed, and I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't really feel either.
Yes!
Right? Like, it was not like a super satisfying episode, but it also... I felt very engaged the whole time. I felt like, oh, what's happening next? What's going on with this? Like, it definitely kept me engaged. I was not bored. I felt like some stuff kind of fell into place. There were some pieces that I was like, oh, yep, I kind of called that, or like that answers a question that I had, or some things that fell into place in a satisfying way, I guess. And then there are some things that were like, really frustrating because I was like, that was so, why did you do that? But like not in a like that's bad writing sort of way, but in a like that character made such a bad choice kind of way, which I think was the intention.
I think my feeling of like not feeling satisfied was it was good that it was very psychological. I think what the flaws were. It was like, oh, everything they did was bad because it was like coming from a naive and bad place. That's really hard to demonstrate, and I'm sure people are still going to tear it apart and call it lazy, but I'm like kind of feeling like that's the only thing they did right. I feel disappointed at the same time because I'm just like, it feels anticlimactic. Though it feels like there was a lot more build up, like something very specifically dark was going to happen, and I'm just like, no, it's just that they were immature in their execution.
Well, I think a lot of that is coming from like, this is a lot more nuanced than Star Wars usually is. Like, Star Wars is usually very, very clear on like dark versus light, good guys versus bad guys. This is a good thing, that is a bad thing. Blue lightsabers versus red lightsabers. You know, it's always been set up as a dichotomy. And here you have people making really bad choices with really good intentions. Like, I don't think there's really anybody in this episode who just has purely bad intentions. Everybody kind of thinks that they're doing the right thing. And that's what makes this really tragic, is like everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing, and they're just making really bad choices based on that. So it makes it a lot harder to like point fingers in some cases. When you're sort of primed to expect that sort of approach, you look at it like, oh, it's gonna be revealed that he's actually a bad guy instead of a good guy, or you know, that sort of thing. Or like, oh, this person's secretly evil instead of, you know, we think that they're good but they're really evil, and it becomes not so cut and dry as that. It's like, oh no, they're not. It's not that they are evil, it's that they made a really bad choice.
And it's definitely shown to us in this episode what they all should have done. Which is a good Star Wars theme mix. To be like, we are still going to spell it out for you, even if we make it nuanced.
And most of the time, it's listen to Indara.
Most of the time, yeah, but she wasn't 100% perfect.
No.
Like she definitely was like good at being like, I was right, but she's not good at execution either.
No.
Yeah.
It was a complex web that they've woven here.
Yeah.
For sure.
She definitely did nothing wrong here, but I would say she probably wasn't great with her teaching methods.
Yeah.
Worth noting. They didn't make a big deal of it. She was kind of the moral compass throughout the whole episode, but at the beginning, like, before her Padawan keeps being really stupid throughout the entire episode, Soul's like, you don't want to maybe spell it out to him? She's like, no, he's going to figure it out to himself. I'm like, that's good, but everyone's different. I think he needs something spelled out before it's too late.
Yeah, that I think that there can be a lot of benefit to that sort of teaching style, to a certain
Yes.
extent that can be really
Yeah.
useful. It clearly did not have good results in this instance.
Yeah.
Did not
Exactly.
turn out well for anybody. She also is overconfident in her teaching methods. Like she even kind of like goes to Soul and she's like, "Oh well, this is how I do it, and that's why I have a Padawan and you don't." She's like bragging about what a better master she is than him, and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
but
then
you
she's
kind of
like,
fucked that up though.
yeah, she's like rubbing his face in it, and he's like, I
Yeah,
really want a Padawan, and she's like, but you don't, and he's
yeah,
like, you literally were teasing me about this 5 seconds ago.
yeah. No, exactly. Yeah,
I'm glad they didn't have him say that because that would have been so narcissistic.
yeah,
You made me do this.
yeah.
it's it's like he's shitty,
This
but
is
he's not that
because of
shitty.
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of the big themes or like moral conundrums that we have here is the choice between protecting these children from a dangerous cult versus leaving them alone. Clearly, Soul thinks that he is protecting them. He obviously has some selfish interest in this as well. He wants a Padawan because Indara just gave him shit about not being able to have one, and he was like, "Well,
Yeah.
now I need to go get a Padawan." And then he stumbles across these girls and he was like, look, a Padawan right there. Um, but he is able to kind of justify to himself that he's protecting them. He has to do it for their own good or for Osha's own good. Um, and but he's really kind of like justifying that. But it's also interesting because you see versus in the first flashback episode where we see things from the girl's perspective, seeing it from Soul's perspective, you see him following them and the kind of bits and pieces that he's seeing without the larger context. So the pieces, he's only seeing these moments where it looks like they're in danger. Like, so
Mhm.
like he follows them into the mountain there. He sees this kind of training scene where Anasea is like pushing them back with the force. And it looks like she's just kind of attacking them, like not really violently, but like kind of violently, but he's not kind of
Kind of violently, yeah.
yeah.
It feels like child abuse.
Yeah. So it's like I
Like
can
from his point of view, it looks like child abuse for sure.
totally.
Yeah.
So like I can totally see that from his perspective, he feels like these girls are in danger. But then there's the kind of larger question, and Dara is kind of trying to like temper that with like, right, but you don't understand, like they're in this totally other culture that's totally separate from us. I think Soul needs some kind of like cultural sensitivity training here. Like, I mean, he's like, but they're
Yeah.
doing this ritual with these like markings and stuff, and she's like, well, ceremonial markings are pretty common in a lot of different cultures, Soul. Like that doesn't necessarily mean, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
That definitely felt like let's baby the audience a little bit because Jedi definitely have to have like the Star Trek like how do you do the whole what's it called
First contact.
representative
Hmm.
ambassador work
Right.
essentially. They have to learn that because essentially
Hmm.
even in episode 1 the Phantom Menace they establish we're ambassadors
Right.
of like peace. They're
Right.
like the UN
Hmm.
except with weapons.
Right. Right. So like
So,
I think like if Soul did know that and was trained in that at some way, he's completely thrown that out the window because he's just really focused on
mhm.
getting himself a Padawan.
Yeah.
Um, and he's just kind of like going to great lengths to justify his actions here at this point.
So, how's everybody else reacting to this moral conundrum? What about Indara, the leader of the Jedi Squad?
Indara, I see as just being so frustrated because she's just like, I feel like this whole episode she's just like, Soul, no, and he's like, Soul, yes, like, and
It's such a perfect way of summing it up. Like
right, like she's just
every
like,
single one of their conversations.
yeah, which is a very Anakin and Obi-Wan dynamic, by the way.
It
Like
is, and
the
he's not even her Padawan. He's just
entirety
like her BFF.
entirety of Clone Wars, I kind of felt like Soul was her Padawan in this episode. Like I could see they
Yeah,
don't say he necessarily wasn't. Like Indara could have been his master, even though they're pretty similar in age, it seems like. But I
yeah,
felt that dynamic. It felt kind of like an Anakin and Obi-Wan dynamic, where like
it
she's
did.
just like, hey, we should wait to hear from the council. We should get this approved. We should discuss what we're gonna do next. And he's just like, no, I'm gonna go do whatever I want.
It is. It's weird because she's also a little Qui-Gon-ish that she
Mm-hmm.
can kind of like see through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
No, but she isn't. She Qui-Gon always listened to the Force.
Yeah.
You know, he
Yeah.
didn't like the bureaucracy,
Yeah.
and he didn't like doing things for selfish reasons,
Hmm.
but he could straight arrow through all of that.
Yeah.
She kind of
She
cherry picked a little bit.
Yeah, she wants to run everything through the council, and in this case, I think she was
Hmm.
right to want to do
She
that.
was,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I feel like she's relying a lot less on the force and more on like protocol and what the council says. And again, that was correct in this instance. But yeah,
it was correct in
in a
this instance.
comparison to Qui Gon, I think you're right that he relies much more heavily on the force for those
Yeah,
sorts of things.
I also, yeah, I'd give her credit that I don't think she's like married to always relying on the council.
Hmm.
It just really did make more sense
Yeah,
here.
she clearly is willing to kind of make her own judgment calls when she absolutely has to. Whether or not those are
Yeah.
always the correct judgment calls is
Hmm.
up for debate, or not. But yeah, I also think that one of the other things that makes it feel kind of like a master Padawan dynamic with her and Soul is that she keeps kind of calling him on his shit about like projecting his feelings onto others when he's like, "Oh, Torben, like your Padawan's really disturbed," and she's like, "You're disturbed, like your mom's disturbed,"
Yeah.
like,
Your
um,
mom's disturbed.
yeah, or like when he's like, whatever he said about OSHA, and she's like, that's what you want, like stop projecting your feelings on others. So like she is still kind of trying to like mentor him and teach him even though he's not her Padawan.
Yeah.
um
He's like trying to tell her things like, "Oh, but OSHA passed," and she's like, "You made her pass.
right,
You literally forced that to
right, like
happen."
you see how you're trying to like manipulate events so that they come out the way you want them.
Yeah.
So
We saw another side to Indara through
mhm.
this, which was nice because I was like glad we did get more of Carrie Ann Moss.
Yeah,
Um, you're one of your favorite characters. I feel like is Mother
I
Anasea
like Mother
in this.
Anasea a lot, and I feel like she's such a cool and complex character. And we talked about this a bit in the last flashback episode because we were seeing it there too, and we are
Hmm.
like, there's sort of this dichotomy between like she's a witch coven cult leader who's put her children in this like cult savior position, but she
Yeah,
also loves them and is like a really loving mother to them, and so we're kind of seeing that at play. And so in this episode, I really and and we were trying to kind of parse like which of these roles is she prioritizing, like is she making decisions
yeah,
based on what she had planned for her children, like cult wise, or what her children want. And we saw her choosing, like telling OSHA like you can go with the Jedi if you want to, and it seemed out of character for a cult leader. Right, we're like, that's
yeah. We
weird.
initially praised this, and then afterwards I questioned it because I was like, it's so random
Yeah,
that like, is it good writing or is it bad writing?
yeah.
Like,
And I'm gonna go
and
with
now
good
that
because I love in this episode when she's, talking to the rest of the coven, and she's like, "Look, Osha wants to go with the Jedi," and they're like, "You can't do this to us. We need her for whatever culty reasons they need her. They're
yeah,
supposed to be our future." Like, and she's like, "Yeah, but like this is what she wants," and they're like, "But you're supposed to be our leader." And she has that great moment where she's like, right now I choose mother. Like she understands that she has these two roles, and in this moment they're in opposition to each other, and she has to choose,
yeah.
and she chooses the mother role. And I thought that was such a
I'm really
beautiful
glad they
moment.
gave us that.
Me too.
And I
Hmm.
almost wish they just gave it to us all in the first flashback episode because then
Hmm.
I'd feel a lot better about it. I wouldn't be like waiting to be like, was the writing good? Oh, it was. They were just doing it out of order, but we thought we were doing it in order and we're just missing things
Yeah,
for no reason.
I heard some other people talking about like that they could have just done all of this, shown both perspectives in the first flashback episode, um, which they totally could have done. And I think probably one of the main reasons to do it this way is just to build suspense throughout the episode because it's a mystery, and you need to leave empty pieces for people to fill in. Um,
It's okay to leave some empty pieces and to
mhm,
come back and show the rest later, but
mhm,
really all it's revealing is how did the Jedi suck
mhm,
fully. And we were
yeah,
like, we already know they kind of sucked.
mhm,
We just weren't told all of it.
yeah.
But I would have been fine going into like the fight with Darth Biceps,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what Soul's character flaws were. I would have
Mm-hmm.
been fine with that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have changed anything. It was just like justifying like dragging this out and being like, "What's the
Mm-hmm.
mystery?" And I'm
Yeah.
just like, we don't care. Just show us the story.
Yeah.
Like,
Um, yeah. So another piece of that is that I was thinking about was when they go back, Sol and Torben are there confronting Nisea and Coral, and they're like, "Well, we have noble intentions," and Anastasia says, "Someday those noble intentions you have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy." And I was thinking about that, and I was like, these intentions are not dissimilar to Qui Gon's intentions in bringing Anakin in. Like, it's the same
ooh,
thing, you know, going and finding a Jedi, a Padawan. It's about the same age, right? They have the same issue, like, oh, they're too old to be a Jedi, but they're going to kind of force that in.
mm-hmm.
And that ends up pretty much destroying just about all of the Jedi in the galaxy, like the noble intention of training Anakin. Um, so that was what where
It's
my mind went
interesting
with
though,
that line.
because yeah, I mean, there were a lot of similarities between the tests that they took.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they pinprick them for the blood. They
Mm-hmm.
say, "What do you see?" Just
Mm-hmm.
like Anakin's tests.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've already talked about how the twins share similarities to Anakin um, in origin and all of that. But like, I definitely think there's a contrast in Qui Gon's intentions because
Yeah,
originally he was just there to get repairs for a ship, and then it
totally.
was like I have to barter. I can't use Republic credits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I'm really being a good Jedi, I'll free the kid and his mom, but I
Yeah, no,
can't.
no, totally. And I don't mean that their intentions were the same. I think they definitely were different. But I mean, talking about the broader concept of noble
Yeah,
intentions on the part of the Jedi.
basically, I'm thinking that one through because that one has an interesting comparison and
Mm-hmm.
contrast.
Yeah.
But either way, you're right. I didn't think Qui Gon when I heard that line. I just thought the Jedi getting more and more bureaucratic until Order 66 happens.
Mm-hmm. Also that.
Um,
Also that.
also, that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, their noble intentions made the Clone Wars happen.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, oh, we have to go to war with the Separatists. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so vague as to why.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's like that does wreak havoc across the galaxy until the only way for the war to end is for someone to be like, guess what? The Jedi were bad the whole time and I killed all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's just like, oh,
Okay.
cool, thanks. We're down with that. We're
Sounds
so down with
sounds
that.
good,
We
bro.
just accept this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Soul's okay, so how do we judge Soul? Because at the end of the day, it's like he just wants to be a dad so badly that he fucks everything up. Like he was kind of playing a moral god in this a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, I think his yeah, I think his biggest mistake here, and Dara calls him out on this too, to an extent, is like he's just trying to play God. He's trying to manipulate events and control things that he really doesn't or shouldn't have any control over. Like when he's like, well, I just want what's best for Osha. And Indara's like, you don't get to decide that. Like, it is not your
That's the
place.
important line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it is not your place to decide what's best for her. You don't have the right to do
That was the
that.
line that hit home. If you're
Yeah.
trying to put your finger on
Yes.
what his flaw is, it's
Yes.
he wants to decide. And it's
Exactly.
coming from a place of what he wants.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's really key here. And but it also is kind of uh, hints at or is kind of a microcosm of the broader concept of Jedi overreach,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of Jedi getting involved in too many things, and sometimes things that they really have no business getting involved in or don't need to be involved
Yeah.
in. You know, that's a concept too. So I see this as kind of indicative of that.
I see them a little bit as like Jedi boomers
Mm,
in that way. Like
hmm
we talked about how it's an interesting sociological observation that the Jedi are like this, but specifically the fact that they're Jedi.
hmm
They're specifically Jedi who are supposed to be monks that are very powerful and protect the universe, But like they've kind of covered that base, and they have for such a long time, and they've gotten bureaucratic. So like all of their teachings to be monks have to feel like if you're teaching a suburban kid in a Disney movie to be a monk. Like it's gotta be like, okay, so be good, but like also you're entitled to things like a Padawan and heroics. So
Yeah.
when they don't get those things, they try to force them to happen because they
Hmm.
think they're entitled to them subconsciously. Like we see
Interesting.
that in the Padawan
Yeah.
being immature and being like, I want to go back to Coruscant because this is boring.
Oh my
So I'm
god.
going to kill everybody.
Oh my god.
And then
I can't
Soul being
even.
like, but I want a
I
Padawan. Shouldn't
just.
I have a Padawan? I'd be a hero if I saved them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like,
No, that's that's very that's insightful. I think that's very
they're
true.
Jedi boomers.
I just
Yeah.
while we're talking about it, I just have to say Torpin sucks so
So much.
much. Like, oh my god,
So
I
much.
was so mad at. I was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? Like, you just
He
went and like
sucks.
ruined all of these people's lives because you were fucking bored? Are you shitting
Mm-hmm.
me? Like, that is the dumbest reason to like he's the
He
only.
was jumping at it
Oh my
too.
god, he was
Like,
like so ready to just be like, "Oh, all I have to do is go and steal these children and we can go home." Like, are you kidding me? That is so insane. And like he's the one where when I was like, "Oh, everybody has like kind of good intentions." Not Torben. Torben is being a fucking idiot.
I
Um
kind of wish Torben wasn't in this. Like, or at least the part with him doing that,
mhm.
episode almost would have been more compelling for me if he didn't be like, I'm so bored, I'm going to be
I
racing
kind
off
of
to fight.
agree.
It
It was like the dumbest
would have been
reason to
stronger
do
if it
something
was like
ever.
Soul escalating everything slowly and not realizing what he was doing.
I kind of
Like,
agree with that. Um,
yeah.
yeah, because I think his motivation and everything around that we've been talking about so far, I think is way more compelling and nuanced.
Yeah.
And this, like, I'm just gonna go do this because I'm bored and I want to go home, is just like,
Yeah.
what? That's so stupid.
Like I like him in the first half of this because
Hmm.
observationally he
Hmm.
conveys a lot of sociologically about where the Jedi are at. But having Torben there, you got your Wookiee battle.
I did get my Wookiee battle. I was thinking, I'm like the part of me that felt a little bit cheated out of the Wookiee Jedi battle when they found him on Kofar has
Mm-hmm.
been satisfied in this episode. I really enjoyed that fight scene.
It was a cool fight scene. I like the slow motion jump.
That
The
was so cool. Like, I don't care who you are or what you have to say about the
Yeah,
show. That was fucking cool.
that was the best part of it for me.
Yeah,
That was the best
it was
part.
definitely the best part. It was awesome.
Yeah, I was immediately frustrated the minute the Wookiee put his hands on him because I was like, okay, so he's trying to kill them, and he's a Wookiee. They dead.
Right. Like,
The minute his hands are on them, just he would have crushed their
he should
skulls,
experience immediate success.
torn off their limbs. Yeah, instantly. And instead he's like, I'm trying to choke them to death. And I'm just like, no, 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 no. That's Chewie being cute and funny with Han. We've established Wookiees rip off men's arms. Like, they if he's being mind controlled and they don't have Wookiee kryptonite up their sleeve, dunzo. Pancaked head into the wall. Like, so that was frustrating to me because I was just like, well, that's bullshit. That's Be consistent, guys. That bothered me a lot.
That's fair.
Also, yeah, I'm gonna move off the Wookiee thing
Okay.
because the fight was cool. The fight was cool, but like it's so hard for me to get past that. There was a lot of like inconsistent power levels in this
Hmm.
episode.
That's fair.
Immediately after, Indara jumps on his head and jumps into the mind control and literally kills the minds of like 30 witches that are mind controlling Kelnaka. And I'm like, wait a minute. If she's that powerful
Hmm.
at a time when every Jedi is experiencing easy mode, how the hell did she not sense May walking up to her at some random bar? And also not have the strength to be like, oh, and now a knife is coming after that little
Hmm.
distraction. Make it make sense.
That's
Or
fair.
just don't make it so it was one witch that was mind
Hmm.
controlling Kelnaka. So just make it make sense. It's not hard. It's not hard.
I did want to say, that I was glad that that kind of gave me some closure on one of my open questions from the first flashback episode, which was how all of the rest of the coven died, because you know, how they found them just all like lying there in a pile, and I was like, well, there's no like rubble on top of them. There's no reason that they should have just like all dropped dead right
That's
there.
true. Yeah.
So this made that make sense. I was like, okay, yeah, that tracks.
Did the other mom character,
Coral.
what's her, the Coral?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Was she also killed that way? I've forgotten already.
Unclear.
Okay.
Unclear
Because we
because
did see her body too, right?
um, in the pile,
Yeah.
I forget. Um, I think so, maybe.
Yeah, because the last thing I remember with her was her wanting Soul to fight her because he
Right,
just killed her wife,
right.
and him realizing, oh, we're really fucking up,
Yeah,
and being like, I won't fight you anymore. And I'm like, a little too late, bro,
yeah.
but
And then she like evaporated, and I guess went
mm,
to join. And so
hang with
like
the
I guess
others.
she went to, yeah, join them. But that was like, was that just a transportation thing? Did her like force essence go somewhere or something like?
This is another thing I had with the power level rant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so apparently they have this awesome ability. It's an awesome ability that we haven't seen done in Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
before to turn into a transparent, gaseous, dark energy that is transparent, can fly other places or something. But if you put a lightsaber through that air, they die. I was like, wait, what is the point of that power? It's literally phasing.
I yeah. Well, I think she was not completely done phasing yet. I think she was like, I think he
It's
caught
too
her kind of
thin.
just at the moment, like before
Stop
she was
justifying things
finished.
for the writers,
No.
Kevin. They didn't. That was such a. They established the power exists.
Yeah.
All we know about it is what we can see.
Uh huh.
That it's phasing, and then a lightsaber goes through a phased space, and they're like, "Oh, but she died anyway." And I was
But
just like, immediately, I like threw my
a
coffee.
lot of the
I was like,
like
"This is stupid."
Anasea molecules were still concentrated in that area.
I don't know. Keep power simple. Like,
But I do think that this was the moment where Soul fucked up the worst.
easily.
Like,
I was honestly surprised that he fucked up that hard
yeah,
in
like
that moment.
all of his other choices along the episode, I'm like, that was the wrong thing to do, but I can see how you thought you were doing the right thing, or how you were able to kind of justify it to yourself.
And
Um,
this was just full
this was
on,
just
like,
a mistake. And like, I like that they slowed it way down, and you can kind of
mm-hmm.
see like, and I think, you know, this was a force power that we've never seen before. I'm sure it was something that Soul's never seen before. I think it just freaked him out, and he was like, "What the is this?" And like, you
Yeah.
know, he thinks that it's Osha coming. It's May, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But
Hilarious.
yeah, May
He
shows
still
up.
can't tell them
He thinks
apart.
it's Osha. He sees Anasea doing this crazy, like, scary looking thing, and he just freaks out, and his immediate reflex is stab it, and that was
Yeah.
a really really bad decision. He killed her. She didn't have to, and I think that moment is so really heartbreaking, especially coming after the scene where she's like, I choose to be a mother and do what my child wants, and he kills her, and she's like, I was gonna let her go with you. Like,
It's interesting what she's going through, like, in the last 24 hours before she dies.
yeah.
Because she decides to do something that's against the cult she's been
Hmm.
raised in.
Hmm.
Because that makes sense to her, going with her gut and her
Hmm.
intuition. And then when she's dying, instead of using her powers to this guy up, she's just like kind of drives the knife in by being
Yeah.
like, you were so wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you didn't have to kill me.
Yeah.
You were so outrageously wrong. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, good on you.
Yeah.
Really stick it to him that
Really.
way.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, what I want to say about May and Osha here, so they explain, and I don't uh, really know a lot of background about this, but when Torben gives him the results of the blood test, he says their M count is really high, which we know is the midichlorians. And then he
Mm-hmm.
says, whoa, their symbiont is the same. Symbiont, I think that's what they called it,
Yeah.
is identical. And they're like, well, they're twins. And he's like, well, even in identical twins, they would have a different one. And I don't know what other, I don't know the background of symbionts, whatever they called it, in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had time to research if that, like,
It's a
where
new
that comes
term.
from.
Yeah, I haven't heard
But
that one before.
I'm going to do some more research about it and see if that's been established in other things. I haven't heard of it in anything else I've read. But my theory is that that is what gives them kind of a force imprint, basically, and that's what makes it
Mm-hmm.
impossible for Soul to tell them apart in the force.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
That's a
and
good
that would
theory.
explain why he can't tell them apart on the ship and in this moment here, because May
Yeah,
shows
and
up,
it's fun to
he
make
thinks it's
fun of
OSHA.
him not being able to tell them apart, but that could, yeah.
Yeah, and so then, yeah, because she shows up, he thinks it's OSHA, and then it's not until after he kills Anasea, and she comes over, and she's like crying, and she looks up at him, and he sees the mark on her forehead, and that's when he realizes that it's May.
Well, this begs the other question: is if he can't tell them apart,
Mm-hmm.
two things, because he can't tell them apart because their force signature is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, even when he saw both of them at the same time, he says, "I felt a connection to OSHA."
That's true. That's true.
So why doesn't he notice that he feels a connection to both of
Mm-hmm.
them or something like that? And then when he's making that really horrible choice
Mm-hmm.
of he can only hold up one side of the
Mm-hmm.
bridge, which is such a Jedi moment because
Yeah.
the reality is you could do both,
Yeah, totally.
but your heart doesn't actually want to.
Right.
So that's why he didn't.
And here's
But he does choose intentionally to save OSHA and not May. And he had no. I don't think.
mm-hmm.
Well, I guess he overheard them. I guess
Yeah.
he overheard them, so that
Yeah.
explains that.
And
But
here's where this gets a little bit dark for Soul,
mm-hmm,
because he's choosing OSHA because she's the one that he wanted as his Padawan all along. He's
mm-hmm.
also choosing the one who doesn't know that he just killed their mother.
Oh yeah,
So he lets May die, and with
yeah,
her, theoretically, dies that knowledge,
yeah.
other than the Jedi that were with him. So
That was like right in front of me, but I didn't think about it that
I
hard.
literally didn't think about it. I
Yeah,
didn't think about that until like 5 seconds ago when we were talking about it.
yeah. That yeah, he had to have that in the back of his head.
Mm-hmm.
He had to.
So,
Yeah.
because that's bringing me back to,
I mean, when she fell, I was like, "You're a strong Jedi," and we've established
yeah,
size matters not.
yeah,
You could hold up both sides.
yeah,
You
or he
could.
could levitate both of the girls over to his
Yes,
thing, like,
there were different things to do.
mm-hmm.
Like you get in your head and you
Yeah,
fuck up, sure, but I'm like the reason he was in his head and screwing up
mm-hmm.
was all of this stuff.
Yeah,
It's the same
yeah,
character flaw. It's what he wanted to happen was
mm-hmm.
happening.
And
Yeah.
so I'm going back to where we left off in the previous episode, where he's got May restrained on the ship, and he's like, "Listen, bitch, I've been thinking for 16 years about what I was going to say to you if I ever met you again,
Yeah.
and you're going to listen to what I have to say," because I was like, what is this coming from? And so I was thinking about that after all of these events. I'm like, what is he trying to tell her? And so, like, this is now really loaded because I'm like, she saw him kill her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, like, what is this conversation going to be? I'm really curious because, like, I don't, I don't know. I'm like, what do you say to that? What do you say
Yeah.
to the girl who saw you kill her mom, and
And
that you
tried to
then
let
let
you
die?
die.
Yeah. And the way that he said it with kind of a lot, like, a really kind of a hard edge, almost kind of
Yeah.
aggressively, I was like, he seems mad at her, and after seeing all of these events, I'm like, what is he thinking? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
he should be like falling at her feet.
I didn't get mad, but I got, "You're gonna listen to me now,
Yeah,
kid."
yeah,
I got condescending.
yes,
I definitely got condescending, and I think maybe he really still hasn't learned his lesson.
mm-hmm.
So we got to see how he sucks, and we finally know who to
Mm-hmm.
root for
Mm-hmm.
here. And this is going to be literally the villain is just a narcissistic Jedi
Mm-hmm.
who's very outwardly destructive and won't accept that. And we get to
Mm-hmm.
see that showdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay. Yeah, as you're talking through that right there, like him talking to her, I'm starting to think, I really don't know what they're going to do
Right?
next. And they say, oh, cast and crew are teasing a bombastic finale or whatever big word, and I'm like, they say that about literally
Yeah.
every show. It doesn't mean it is or not. That's just how marketing works. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
say, so the end is going to be great, even if it isn't.
Every movie that comes out is the number one movie in America because they got one person to say it. Like,
One thing
that's
I started
meaningless.
thinking, yeah, I started thinking they're going to do at the end of this episode, realizing there's one left, and
Mm-hmm.
I hope they don't because I hate it, is just really hard cliffhanger for the season. You know, where they're
Mm-hmm.
still separated.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe May gets her revenge on Soul, but it's like both the twins are still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's across the. There isn't really a resolution. I would like for this season to wrap up so that even if there is a season two, the loop is a little bit closed. Like it could stand on its own.
Yeah, this
And
is
I
what
don't think they're gonna do that.
that's what I'm like. There's too much unless they do like
Way too
a
much.
a doubly long episode, which I don't think they're gonna do. It might be a little bit longer than the others, but I don't think it's gonna be double length. Um,
Yeah.
but there's yeah,
There's too much
there's
ground to
way
cover in
way
too
too much
short of a
ground to
time.
cover. I agree because there's
Because I also like I think both twins are going to be alive at the end of this episode,
I think
unless
so
Soul
too,
just murders her and they establish Soul's the villain
which would
in
be
the next one.
insane.
Yeah, and he's just like covering up that his wait no, this is funny. This is so funny. If season 2 is just one Jedi being like, well, years ago I kind of killed an entire village because I wanted a Padawan. As a result, my Padawan didn't do too hot as a Jedi and we failed them. And then their sister, who I left to die, came back and killed all my Jedi friends. And then I brought 10 more friends into the forest, and her master killed all of them. And we found out, oh, she brought back and found the Sith, and he's just out there. And now my old Padawan is his new apprentice. Maybe I just don't tell anybody and hope I don't lose my job.
Right?
And that's just literally the whole premise of season 2. We
That's
don't even get the perspective of Darth Biceps. It's just him being like,
hmm.
no, I haven't seen those reports. You know, like, it's
Yeah,
just shit like that.
season 2
The
is
whole
just Soul like in the Jedi Temple shredding papers.
Yeah, it's just like just trying to cover shit up.
I was just gonna say if it had not at this point, if it had not already been revealed that Chimera was Darth Biceps, I would be theorizing that it was Soul because
Yeah,
the best way to cover his tracks would be to kill all of the other Jedi on his team, right? Which was the
yeah.
initial assassination plan was to kill all of the Jedi, including him, but that is, semantics.
A good friend of mine had this theory, I think in week 2 or 3.
Mhm,
He said it makes sense. He's probably actually
mhm,
secretly the bad guy. And I
yeah.
was like, I know why that's not going to be the case. And he's like, why not? And I'm like, because it's really good.
Yeah.
And he thinks about it for a second. He's like, yeah,
Mm,
that's probably why
mm,
they're not going to do it.
yeah.
It's Disney.
I mean, I wouldn't do anything. I would change nothing about Darth Biceps. He's perfection.
He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm super happy with that guy existing in the universe, causing
Totally.
anarchy.
So
He's great.
I'm interested, but yeah, you're right. In the finale, we've got that we have nothing new about him in this episode. So we've got lots of stuff to tie up with him.
Yeah.
We've got this. Like, there's lots
I don't
of
like
cover.
that this season's going to be a cliffhanger season.
Mhm.
I would much rather it come full circle in some way,
Mhm.
because it seems like it's all just this big event that led up to a Sith encounter,
Mhm.
and that Sith obliterated,
Mhm.
and then all the traces were disappeared,
Mhm.
and the audience is left with a moral conundrum, and there's
Mhm.
one or two survivors that become the acolyte,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
it. And season 2 could be a continuation of those two characters,
Mhm.
but like I
I
don't like the idea that they're like, this story isn't finished. We'll finish it
yeah,
in two.
and
I'm like,
I think
it's
like
a fragment. Consider revising.
yeah, and I think leaving some of those t- um ends not tied up is good because that gives you stuff to work toward in season two. But we need closure on we need to close the loop on the main story
Yeah.
elements. But like I don't really want it. I don't want the season to end without finding out more about Vernestra. That's like
Yeah.
partially because then there's just like not that much of her. It feels kind of like Hera and Ahsoka, where it's like they just didn't really give her much to do in this whole
No.
season.
Like
So
nothing.
it's been nothing but question marks with Vernestra, and like I have a lot of theories about Vernestra. I want to know if they're true, and I don't want to wait 2 years to find out. Um,
How they end the first season really is going to make a difference, I think, for a lot of
yeah,
people who are watching
hmm
too, because they're like, I'm invested, but
hmm
I want to feel like I watched a good movie, not like
right,
I'm supposed
hmm
to wait to invest more.
yeah,
Because once you start waiting, like, the way television model works is it gets lazier.
hmm
Season 3 is always bad, no matter
hmm
what show you're talking about. But yeah, it's like everything always kind of falls off after they're like, oh, we're okay. We got a couple seasons. We've
hmm
landed an
hmm
audience. We'll be able to milk money off of this no matter how hard we work for a couple of years. The budget falls down.
hmm
Um, I don't want that for a show like this.
yeah.
Like, I'd rather,
You want to leave
it,
people
it
after
ends in
the
a
first
punch.
season. You want to leave people feeling really excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not a cliffhanger is not going to work for something that's a new concept with an old franchise.
yeah,
It's so. I mean, what I'm taking from this is for us to do our podcast, we've got to watch every episode
hmm
each week. But I was thinking, if I binged this show, I think I would have appreciated it a lot more in binge form.
I had that thought. I had seen some people kind of
Yeah,
having that discussion online. Like, would this have worked better as like a binge it, like release it all at
yeah.
once? Um,
And maybe it's 2 episodes shorter, or at least one.
yeah,
Because I know we could have combined the flashback episodes and
yeah,
it would have been just as impactful.
yeah. And I think like
1000%.
I I like having episodic like weekly shows because I think the experience of it is more fun to have it like be able to like look forward to it each week. But yeah, I feel like as Star Wars and a lot of things in general are moving away from doing movies and more towards streaming like this, it's like you're gonna get things that could be movies. Like Obi-Wan could have been a movie.
I would have cut it in half. I would have completely cut it in half if it was a movie.
And I'm not saying that it would have been better as a movie. I
Yeah,
think I loved it as a series. Thought it worked great. But like, I mean, if this was 10 years ago, Obi-Wan would have been a
yeah,
movie.
definitely. And I think they even mentioned in interviews they were talking about it being a movie 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
like they made Solo a movie,
Right.
but it
Yeah. So
kept
and then like
changing.
after
Yeah,
Solo, they were like actually we're going to move toward like streaming format. So they started putting everything in this format. So
yeah,
like this could have been a movie.
yeah,
Just changes how people interact with it, and then it's like, is my audience ready to wait for a week in
yeah,
between all of these things, and are they prepared to? Will they be patient with us? You see it like that's one of the things that's been frustrating is seeing so much of the pushback about it and the negative feedback being like, well, even and like complaining about the writing or like, oh, well, this doesn't make sense or that doesn't make. It's like, well, they're not done yet. Like, let them finish
yeah,
and then decide. Like it's tricky when you're relying on your audience to stay with you through those moments because when you have an arc for something, so like with a lot of TV shows that are episodic where it's built to just be kind of a rinse and repeat, not that all shows are like this, obviously, but where you more or less land in the same place where you started, so you can watch
hmm
it episodically, and or you can just kind of jump in at any point, or and then there's not really a clear end point to it. You can just keep
yeah,
it going for as many seasons as they will renew you for, you know,
yeah,
versus something like a miniseries like Obi-Wan that was only ever meant to have one season. So it's like this is a standalone thing. Again, like we said, that it could have been a movie. It would have been we would have lost a lot, or it would have had to been a couple movies or something. But when you split it up into weekly episodes, you're relying on your audience to stay with you through those moments because it's set up. You can't have every episode feel like its own movie and have a
you
climax and
can't.
have a
Yeah,
satisfying ending and everything like that. If that's what people are looking for, it's like there's gonna be points where if you take a movie and you split it up into
yeah,
6 parts, some of those are just going to be build up, and we see that in this show too, in The Acolyte. And people have been frustrated with like, oh well, this episode, like nothing happened, it was all just like set up. It's like, well, there's going to be segments of this story that are just set up because you can't have a
Yeah.
climax in every episode. So
Which is fine. I mean, I think we were talking about finale anxiety at
mhm,
the end of the day.
mhm,
Like, because if they don't have a strong finale, if the finale also feels like set up for
yeah,
not even season 2, but just please come back later,
yeah,
that is disappointing.
I would be disappointed with that. Yeah, I need
Yeah.
some closure if you're going to make me wait, and especially because production cycles with these types of projects take so long. It's probably going
Oh
to be at
yeah.
least 2 years before we get another season of this. It's not like, oh, it's going to be back in the fall.
But just
Um,
like TV, you can have movies where your movie is part of a franchise like Star Wars,
mhm.
and still, even Star Wars called its movies episodes.
Right? Yeah,
And
yeah.
yet the movies still felt like they had a clear ending,
Hmm.
and they could stand alone
Hmm.
enough. Like
Yeah.
they're better together,
Hmm.
but they can stand enough on their own as a
Hmm.
this story has a beginning, this has an end.
Hmm.
And I think that's why we're having finale anxiety, because we're like, don't do the TV
Yeah.
thing where you're like, here, we've got a show and you're still watching it,
Hmm.
right? Like that's how some shows
Hmm.
just don't work.
Right.
Is because it's like, but you needed to be like, wow, what a great first season. I can't wait for the next one. Not,
Exactly.
I guess they left us hanging.
Yeah. You have to leave it feeling really satisfied, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, you have to come out of it with a really good feeling. Like that, watching that made me feel so good. Not just like,
Yeah.
ah. um
So we have finale anxiety. This
yeah,
essentially, yeah. Yeah, this feels like a binge show. It'll be
yeah,
fun to binge like after, to be like, okay, how does it
yeah,
work? Like if it's back to back, how does
yeah.
that feel?
I kind of
That'll be
want to,
cool.
like, when we do our recap episode, I would like to go back and like binge the whole season again before we do our recap episode.
Everybody expect a recap episode coming in December. That's how long. Who is that guy? And now, how does this relate to the Star Wars universe?
So the one link that I wanted to mention that ties this to the High Republic books is in the very beginning when they reference the hyperspace disaster. So when they're studying life on Brendok, and Indara is explaining why that's significant because Torben is like, "Why do we have to be here? This is boring. I want to go home." And she's like, "Well, 100 years ago, this planet was listed as uninhabited, like there was no life because of this hyperspace disaster. The hyperspace disaster is one of the main events in phase one of the High Republic novels.
Oh,
So,
cool.
yeah, and that timeline matches up because it's about 100 years before this. So,
So when I hear hyperspace disaster, my I live on planet Earth brain goes, "Oh, so there was an accident on the 405, but it was catastrophic. It
that's
was like a
exactly what
50-car
happened.
pile up."
That is
Really?
exactly correct. So, basically, what
How does
happened,
that happen in Star
I
Wars?
will tell you. A big ship is going through hyperspace down the
Uh-huh.
405,
Yeah.
explodes.
No shit.
What happens when that happens is that the debris from it emerges out of hyperspace in all random points in the galaxy at the speed of light, or at like faster than light speed.
Wait. Okay, so this place was uninhabited after a hyperspace disaster.
So basically, what
It's just one place that was affected out of thousands,
correct. So
millions,
what
maybe.
probably
Okay,
happened was
probably
a piece of
thousands. It's one
debris from
ship,
this ship probably hit it and caused
like
like
a
a
meteor.
exactly like a dinosaur extinction kind of event where like a meteor hit it and just like wiped out all
That's
life on the
crazy.
planet. Yeah. um yeah,
That feels like really good science in the science fiction.
yeah,
But
yeah, it was really wild to like, and I was listening to
how
this.
has it not happened more in Star
Well, so
Wars? Is the big question.
they have safeguards against it, like it's supposed to be impossible for that to
Oh,
happen.
okay.
And
Was
then
that
it
like the
does.
first time it had happened since people had gotten really sophisticated in Star Wars
Yeah, and
and they
so
learned their
it
lesson?
freaked everybody out because they're like, this is supposed to be impossible. And so that happens in Light of the Jedi, which is the first High Republic book. I was listening to it on audiobook while I was on an airplane, which was the
Yeah.
incorrect setting to listen to that in.
Oh
I'm
my
like
god.
on this flight, And I'm like, I've made a mistake. It's like, it's very dramatic and it's like really terrifying. It's very well written and it's like, and the audiobook is really good too. It's like very realistic. It like makes you feel like you're there. And I was like, I'm gonna tumble out of the sky and explode for sure.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that sounds horrible.
yeah, it was
Unlike, not too unlike, this is a horrible thing I used to do on planes when it was like, oh, you can now bring your laptop and watch movies on a
yeah.
plane before every seat has a screen on it
Uh-huh.
now. I would always load my laptop up with Air Force One,
Uh-huh.
nonstop with Liam Neeson,
Hmm.
Snakes on a Plane, just
Of
every
course.
movie where a plane crashes, just so I could be watching that and people around me would be uncomfortable.
You're a
And I just took such,
monster.
I'm such a monster. Because I was like, who's going to be like, can you not watch that movie?
You have
I was
like
just
the
like,
first episode of Lost.
yeah, that was on there too.
Of course it was. But yeah, so I watched that. I don't typically get anxiety when I fly, but
Mm-hmm.
that book, listening to
Yo,
that on a
that would
plane
do
was
it.
was not the move.
Yeah. Do you think the Millennium Falcon is up to code?
No. After all the modification, all the modifications it's had, actually, I know it's not, and here's why. I was just listening to the Corellian trilogy, uh,
Uh,
in which wait, was it the Corellian trilogy? Yeah, it was the Corellian trilogy. Um, they're going to be flying the Millennium Falcon to Corellia, and they're taking Leia, who's now chief of state. This is a Legends book, and Han basically like he doesn't want them to like look around it like they're supposed to get it like inspected. He basically like bribes his way out of like getting it inspected.
yeah. Oh,
um
that's great.
Although it's explained that it's not that it's unsafe, it's that it has a bunch of illegal modifications. So anyway, yeah, that seeing the reference to the hyperspace disaster was cool because that's a big tie into the books. um
What do they call that event in the High Republic?
and
Do
they
they
call
just
it
refer to it as
the great
the...
hyperspace disaster.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Does she call it the hyperspace disaster or a hyperspace disaster?
um
She seemed
I
kind
think
of
she said
cavalier about
A.
it. Yeah.
Um,
But if it's 100 years ago, it lines up with the one you're talking about, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I guess the only thing that doesn't quite add up there would be that probably and 100 years ago is a long enough time that they wouldn't have been alive yet, but it's recently enough that and that was a big enough event that probably everybody would have like learned that in history. Like everybody would have
It's
heard of
like
that.
talking about... Yeah, it's like talking about World War II or like
Yeah,
the Great
exactly.
Depression.
It's like
It's...
it
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, oh, this like big hyperspace disaster happened. It would have been like, oh, this happened during the great hyperspace disaster that everybody knows about. Um,
Yeah.
it would be
So,
weird if
a
not that.
nitpick, but it could also
It's
just be a
fine.
line reading. You know,
Yeah,
they didn't have a canonist on set that day to be like,
right.
actually give that a little bit more reverence.
Exactly, exactly.
Like,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I also wanted to give I wanted to shout out a couple more actors that from this
Mm.
episode. Leah Brady, who plays young May. I've been trying to figure out where I knew her from because she looked really familiar. And I finally figured it out. She plays the little girl in my new favorite Christmas movie called Violent Night with David Harbour.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, right?
No shit!
Yes, that's
That
her.
movie's so
I
hilarious.
love that movie so much. That's my new favorite Christmas tradition to watch that with my brother.
The Santa Claus slasher slash action movie trope is dumb that it's trying to replicate itself so much, but that one knocked it out of the
It's
park
done so well.
so well.
Oh my gosh. It's great. So I was excited to see that that was her. The other actress that I was super, super excited about is Margarita Levieva, who plays Mother Coral. And I did not,
Wait, that's Margarita Levieva?
yes, I did not.
No
You know
fucking
her
shit.
too? I love her so much.
Dude,
What do you know
we've
her from?
bonded.
We
We
did?
know her from The Invisible.
Oh
Yes.
my god, I forgot that you also know that
We
movie.
we were so stoked that we both appreciated the shit out of that movie. Like, I was
I forgot
obsessed
about
with that
that.
movie the year before I came to
Me
Ithaca.
too. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and we were like, "Oh my god, you like this too? You know it's good?" Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I totally
That's
forgot that
her?
that was yeah. So I
She's
obviously
on fire right now. She had
I
like her
know.
own show. It
She
didn't do
did?
super well, but she had like her... Yeah, it was like on Netflix. She was like a spy or something while also doing a double life as a mom. I watched like the first 5 episodes.
Oh, I
I
didn't
was
see it.
into it actually.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not realize that that was her. Obviously, with all the makeup and the contacts and everything,
I did not
I
recognize
didn't
her at
recognize her at all.
all.
But when I was watching the credits, I saw Margarita Levieva come up, and I was like, "What?" That like,
Yeah,
and yeah. So she was, for our listeners, she was in this movie called The Invisible that came out in 2007, which Peter and I both loved. It was such a like emo kid movie. But one of my favorite parts about that movie was this actress. She was so good, and I loved her so much. And like to the point where I have not watched that movie in like 17, 16 years now.
yeah,
But and I haven't seen her in anything since then, but I remember her name because it was like burned in my brain because I was like so obsessed with her at that time.
yeah.
Um, and so I was like so excited to
She
see her
was
pop up
so
in
good in
this.
that movie.
And one of the things that I remember really loving about her was just her like raw emotion. And I think she really brought that to bear in this episode.
Yeah.
Just this like really raw power, raw emotion that just really drew me into her character. So yeah, I was super excited to see her in this.
I'm kind of bummed if that's the last we're going to see of her character. I kind of hope
I
her
hope
character
it's not.
survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to like overcomplicate things. I
Hmm.
like that it's kind of stripped bare. We've lost
Hmm.
all our supporting characters except for Venestra now. It's like
Hmm.
really just the master and the masters and the twins
Hmm.
and all their flaws are just on the
Yeah,
table to
and I'll
fight.
and I'll say
That's
like
it.
I talked a lot about
But I'd
how
like her there too.
yeah,
Sorry.
and like we talked a lot about how Anasea is a really compelling and complex character, but Mother Coral is as well, and
Yeah.
she's kind of the foil to Anasea in a lot of ways, where Anasea is the more warm, loving, relatively peaceful in as much as a cult leader
Mm-hmm.
can be peaceful, but represents that kind of like warm motherly feel. Coral is all like protection and
Yeah.
strength and rules. Like it's a lot very rigid, but
I can
at
see
her
why they work
core,
though as
exactly,
partners.
exactly, they complement
Helps
each
you
other
feel
really
balanced.
well as partners.
Yeah.
And but she's all about protecting her children. So like I love her moment. Like so Anastaea's moment is when she's like, I choose to be a mother in this moment. Coral's
Mm-hmm.
moment is when the Jedi are coming and Anasea is like, I told you, like whatever she said, I told you, and she's like, and I told you that I would die before I would let the Jedi take my children. And that's kind of her whole thing is like, I will lay down my life to protect my children.
It's
And like
interesting though,
respect.
because the other moment is she tells what's her name? She tells May you can stop
Oh,
OSHA.
also true. She's like, get
She
mad. She gets
doesn't.
her all hyped up.
She does get her hyped up, which is interesting
And
because
she also
that's
has her tap into
black
anger.
and white.
Yeah.
That's not very good parenting.
No, it's
I
straight up
understand it's
not.
what she believes in, but
Hmm.
it is straight up
Hmm.
not good
It's also a super
to.
dark sider thing to do to be like, yes, tap into your anger, right? Like,
Yeah.
get mad.
But I was more thinking it's interesting that she says stop her, and May
Hmm.
jumps to I'll kill you, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's such a big leap. We've
Yeah.
established that May likes to hurt animals, but we've also
Hmm.
established she has this huge, crazy emotional reaction when
Hmm.
OSHA says she's going to leave.
Right.
She's also kind of a narcissist in that she says, I'll always love you, but only if you like do right by me. It's
Hmm.
conditional. But it's still a big leap for a kid to say, I can stop you from leaving by killing you. When it's like, that's
Yeah.
not even your goal. You just want her to not
Hmm.
leave.
Hmm.
Like, are we trying to it just feels like a big
Yeah.
leap.
And we do
It's always
establish,
felt like a big
and
leap.
we do establish here also that she did not intentionally set the fire. That was an
No,
accident.
no, 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 no.
No?
I completely disagree with that.
You don't think.
An accident. Wait, did I miss something? Because we see
Yeah.
the same thing
No.
twice.
No. She sets the book on fire, and then
Yes.
yeah, and then but then I think it becomes more like she's trying to put it out. I think she's like waving the book like
Because she
it
changed
freaks
her
her out.
mind midway
Yeah, no,
through.
I think it like caught on fire like more than or like scared her. It like freaked her out a little bit. No, she starts waving it like she's trying to put it out, and then
Okay,
she drops
she
it.
locks her in, and then she sets fire to the book so she can set fire to other things. And she says, I will kill you.
No, I don't think she set the fire on purpose. I think she was trying to burn the book because she was angry, but I don't think she meant to drop it on the floor. She like dropped it on accident and then was like, "Oh shit!" and she like tries to put it out.
Here's the thing,
She
though.
got carried away, but she realized it, and I don't
It's like
think
one
that
of
she
those
meant
things
to
that's
set it
like
on fire.
they're trying
She
really
meant to
hard
set the
to
book
make
on
it
fire,
work.
but I think she tried to put it out. Watch it again.
Okay, silly question. Our idea this week: um, choose a Star Wars parent from this episode for yourself that you would have liked to have as a parent as a kid. Your choices are Sol, Amasea, Coral, or Indara. There are no good choices. We've gone over all of their bad parenting stuff in this episode. I think you've been going pretty regularly. Should I take this one?
Take it away.
Okay. I would go with Indara.
Okay.
I think she would probably be a frustrating parent because she'd want you to figure out everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always the way. It's probably not the way with me because I'm an idiot. But if I always had to figure out everything, I think that probably would have been good for me growing up. So not really a funny take or anything, but I think that would have been the way I would have wanted to go if I had to choose one of their bad parenting methods to benefit from.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think she's you could do worse than Indara.
True. It feels like an easy answer, but I also feel like literally exactly the shit treatment she gave what's his name. Mm-hmm. I think I would have benefited from it as opposed to
I could have used some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also kind of like looking at this episode, like who fucked up the least bad?
Yeah. To be fair, she did. Like,
yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't want Coral's like crush your enemies Kylo Ren vibe that she gives because I'm just like, yeah, I don't need more of that.
I was gonna say you would have turned evil way too fast.
I would have already been Sith. Yeah,
yeah.
Been evil so fast. So
that's accurate.
What's yours?
I would probably have to go with Anisea.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a hard one because I'm like, there's definitely I probably wouldn't have wanted to be raised in a cult, but also if I decided I wanted to leave, she would let me. I like that she is really warm and loving. That's something that I feel like I definitely needed. Like I was fortunate in that I got a lot of that from my mother, and I needed it, so I wouldn't want to have a parent that I didn't get that from. And she also let Osha make her own choices and decide what she wanted to do. And I'm watching this with Chris, and he's like, why are we letting 8-year-olds make their own decisions? Just tell her she can't go. Which is also kind of valid. I'm like, well, I probably wanted to do a lot of dumb stuff when I was 8.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the sentiment that she wants to empower her to make her own choices for her life and everything. Like I like that. So
tell Chris for me he's single-handedly deconstructed the entire plot of Pokemon. There's no reason a 10-year-old should be running out to do dogfights like across the world.
Definitely.
I'm going to go on a forever camping trip with my friends all across the planet while collecting strange animals and making them fight.
Speaking of camping trips, we're watching this. I watched this last night, and then I watched it again with Chris tonight. And he's like, in the beginning of the episode, he's like, wait, their ship is right there. Why are they camping?
Make it make sense.
And I was that's such a good question. And then I realized, like, when they bring the girls back to like do the test and stuff, in the background they've got this little like Jedi RV like pop out camper thing that's so cute.
That's adorable.
But I'm okay. But literally the ship is like right there, so I'm like, why?
Can we, as an aside, keep in mind like pinpointing an episode in the future that Chris should just join us on the podcast for?
Yes.
So many of his observations are so fun.
They are. It's hard because most of the time when we record this, Usually he's asleep by the time we record. When we
Oh, that makes
record at
sense.
this time,
That'd be fine.
he's always got little like observations like that. There are things that I'm like, I wouldn't have noticed that, but you're right.
You're so right. That one's so funny. Well, I guess it's car camping. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like camping out under the stars. They got a campfire. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
cute. That's a vibe.
Why
Maybe
be on
they're
the
trying
ship
to
all the time? Yeah.
maybe they're trying to make it fun for Torben, so he doesn't feel the need to go out and like ruin a bunch of people's lives. I don't know.
It's okay, little Torben.
Camping doesn't
pat
seem
his
to
poof.
be doing it for him. Pat the poof.
Pat the poof.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it'll be. They tried to like sell it. They're like, oh, we'll make it like a little adventure. We'll go camping, and he's like, no, I want to be in Coruscant.
I want to be in the city with all my rich friends. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening.
We'll be posting new episodes whenever we get them done at whenever they're ready. May the Force be with you.